Do you guys remember there was a song that goes, because I'm a rapper from Milano, Anapolo, Italiano. Do you remember that at all?
Not at all.
Maybe that was before our time.
How about Giovanotto? That was the other one, was Giovanotti.
Giovanotti, yeah. He used to rap in English as well.
Musica della Madonna, gente, divertente.
Arcade Studio Podcast. Conversations about creativity with guests that use it for a living. Available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, and many other platforms. This podcast is 100% self-produced and free. If you like the episode, think about subscribing to our channels, leaving us a review, and following us on Instagram. Every little gesture is fundamental to help us grow. Okay, the intro is almost over. Let's start the show. Arcade Studio Podcast with Andrea and René Olivo. Listen more.
My name is Maz Jobrani, and for me, creativity is coming up with a good joke. There's no real formula except continuing to write and continuing to talk about stuff going on in your life. And I do that on stage usually. I find it on stage, and then you refine the joke. And then eventually the joke makes it into your act. And then eventually you put your act into a comedy special and you put it online or you put it somewhere. And then you work on the next jokes.
So it's just a constant process for you of just like living life basically and finding the funny in life.
I'm on the hamster rabbit or the wheel, the hamster wheel, just going. Yeah, that's why I really think you got to do what you love doing, because you're going to be doing it for the rest of your life, hopefully, if you're lucky. And for us, there is some pressure because when you tour, you go to the same city after a year and a half. So when you go back a year and a half later, you want to have at least half of your act or 75% of your act be new. Otherwise, people are going to say, "Oh my God, it's getting old." That's the curse of comedy, is that we musicians, people want to hear the old stuff.
Yeah.
Comedy, they want to hear the new stuff. So again, I'm constantly thinking about things that come up either in stories, if I'm talking on a podcast or talking to somebody, a friend or somebody out and about, and I say, "Oh, that's that's a funny thing that happened. Yeah, let me see if I can turn that into something." And then you go on stage, and I live in Los Angeles, where they have a bunch of comedy clubs, but the three main clubs are the Comedy Store, the Laugh Factory, and the Improv. So on a given Friday or Saturday, I will probably go to all three, so basically 6 times over the weekend. And as you're going, you're trying this new joke out. You're trying to fit it into your act. And so that's how we create.
And during the week? On your time?
During the week, nothing. I do nothing. I have no inspiration, nothing. I just stay home and look at the ceiling. No, during the week, I try to work. I have a lot of ideas I want to do, and I think I've realized recently that I might have ADHD, and I don't want to take it lightly that people do, but I honestly think that I might have it because I have so many things that I start that I just haven't finished. So I need to get a little better at that. So I have a script I've been wanting to write, a screenplay. I have a one-man show I've been wanting to write. And really, from what I understand, and I think this is true, is setting up the routine, like saying, okay, every day I'm going to write, an hour a day at 10:30 every day, and just do it. Just because once you just do it, it's amazing how much stuff comes out of you. I think we also have a fear of failure. So you go, well, I'm not going to write that. I'm not going to try writing the screenplay, because if it's not good, then, oh my God, then I'm a failure. But that's not the truth. The truth is that the first draft of everything is horrible.
Exactly.
And you just got to get it out. And so, again, I make excuses. I'm like, oh, yeah, wait, I got to walk the dog. Let me walk the dog, then I'll come get started. Oh, my God, I need some almonds. Let me get some almonds, and then I'll get started. You know what? I need to definitely make sure that my, my bills were paid before it's constant, and I need to really wrap my head around at least the 2 projects I've been really wanting to do. I want to get to that. So that'll be after this European tour, when I'm back, maybe even during the European tour, I think I'm going to be writing, because I've already started both of them. So it's just like it's just about opening up the file and writing. So why not? And every time I write, I feel good about it. So
yeah, it's hard to open it up. I don't know why it's so hard to open up that file sometimes. It's like it weighs a lot. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have the same thing. I mean, as a photographer, I have the thing where if I'm not taking the picture, I should be designing the next photo shoot or whatever it is that I have. And it's like, it really is a matter of, okay, waking up at the same time and sitting down for like 2 hours, just put out the ideas. And then after that, break down the rest of the day as much as possible into the other things that I have to do. No, that sort of thing.
It's like for my stand-up, I mean, that's the only thing that I've consistently continued to do for the past 25 years. No matter where I am, what I'm doing, I always get on stage 2, 3, 4, 5 times a week just to keep going. So you have to, that's why you have to love what you do, because you're going to have to do it, all the time and feel good doing it. I was telling a friend recently, I don't recall having a time when I got on stage and I was like, man, I wish I didn't do this. Like I've always gotten on stage and found happiness in it. So, doesn't mean there's not angst and anxiety and all that other stuff that comes with it. And it doesn't mean that every set has gone great. There's certainly been sets that haven't gone great. But I've always felt like, I'm happy I got on the stage.
Was that like from like the very first time you got up? Like, was it an immediate like rush?
I started doing plays when I was 12 years old, and I love being on stage. So I love being on stage. I love being in front of people. And then when I started doing stand-up comedy, I think what I was nervous about was, these are not a playwright's words. These are my words. Mm-hmm. So now I'm being judged on my words as well, on my opinions as well. And I was afraid that they weren't funny enough or they weren't good enough. And again, once you realize that stand-up comedy is a work in progress, or the way you present your ideas are a work in progress, then you're easier on yourself and you go, okay, they don't have to be perfectly worded the first time. And so, the first time I got on stage, I'd actually put together this like monologue based on these different accents that I could do. And I was happy about it. Looking back on it, it's pretty cringeworthy because it's like, oh my God, it's just so amateur, such an amateur level. But I, at the time, was happy that I was doing it. This is fun. This is cool, and I thought it was. I mean, you also, I think somebody was saying like you also got to be a little delusional. So I think I was probably a little delusional. Like in my mind, it was better than it was.
Yeah, you have to have that. Otherwise, at least at the beginning. Otherwise, you stop. I think.
Yeah,
it's very scary. Everything that you do in a creative environment is like the failure rate is so high that if you don't actually like have a little bit of incoscienza.
No, now we're going with the English translation live.
No, how would you say it in Italian? Io parlo italiano, ho studiato in Italia, sì, per un anno.
Bene, bravissimo.
Sì.
Non è delusione, because it's not delusion, because that's
that's like delusional. Yeah,
exactly. But
it's similar though. It's like
there's a doggo.
There's the bug.
Yeah. like living in a fantasy almost. Like fantastic. Una
fantasia. Yeah.
Sì, una how do you say mind again? La mente. Yeah. Una mente di fantasia or something. You kind of got to be.
Yeah.
That's cool. Like, is Italian one of the accents that you would do?
I did not do the Italian accent when I did the characters. No, I did not. It was a whole other story and it was silly. But Italian came because growing up in America, you didn't see Iranians on screen. And so I think I had an affinity towards all the Italian actors and the Italian movies and all the mob movies and Robert De Niro and Al Pacino and all these guys. And then when I was in college, I took an Italian class, and as soon as the lady said, the teacher goes, "Come ti chiami?" And I was like, "What a great!" Like it's like da 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 da. I was like, "What a great language," because I'd been studying French before that, which is also pretty language, but it wasn't as vibrant. Mm-hmm. So I fell in love with Italian, and then I studied it, and I did a year in Padova, which was one of the best years of my life.
I can imagine Padova's a party all the time. Veneto.
Yeah, and I had a girlfriend that was Italian that didn't speak any English, and she was fantastic, Orietta, and I actually was in touch with her recently. She lives in Rome now. It was great to have someone that didn't speak English, because then I was forced to speak Italian. And by the time I left, my Italian was like really good. I was writing papers. I was reading books. It was crazy.
Fantastic.
You can hear it.
So are you going to be doing anything in Italian in your show in Milan?
I may mess around a little bit. I was thinking about that because I know the guys like Eddie Izzard and some others have actually done stand-up in another language. I think given that my audience will probably be English speakers, Italian speakers, Persian speakers, I think I can mess around a little bit that night with some people and, just have a fun time. And I haven't really thought of any jokes in Italian. I think just conversing and probably having my broken Italian will probably be funny because I'm probably going to say something like the last time I went to Italy, I hadn't been to Italy in a long time and I went with my family and I, by the end I was speaking pretty well. But when we first got there, I wanted to ask this guy for directions to the train station, to get tickets. And I think I said something and I was there with my wife, son, and daughter. And I was trying to say my daughter's la mia figlia, but I was like, lei è mia ragazza. Which means she's my girlfriend, right?
Yeah.
And then the guy kind of looked at me, and I'm like, no. And then I was like, oh no,
Lost in translation.
Yeah, lost in translation.
Are these your first shows in Italy?
First time ever in Italy. I've been coming to Europe now for several years, and it first started in the Scandinavian countries. We used to do Sweden, Norway, and then the Schengen countries, the Holland, and then London. Those were always kind of in the mix because they speak English as a country very well.
Yeah.
Then after a while, we started doing shows in Paris as well. And then after that, the last time I was there, we did Germany, which I was very curious to see how it would go, and it went well. So this time around, I said, guys, I got to do Italy. So we found that theater in Milan, and I'm so excited, man.
It's pumping here. The comedy scene has just exploded in the last, I'd say, 4 years. I think it started with the first big name, I would say, was Louis C.K. that decided to pop over here during his year of in the desert.
Yeah.
And then he came and he sold out ton of shows, and then I think people realized that Italians actually do speak English, contrary to popular belief, and there are enough expats to fill a theater at least for one round, and it's a great place to come. And because of that, also a lot of little clubs have started popping up, a lot of little open mics and things like that didn't exist before have all started to exist now, which is fantastic.
So cool, man. Cool. I'm so excited. I can't. And I've never really spent a lot of time in Milan. The only time I came to Milan was when I was studying abroad. I still had my Iranian passport. So every time I wanted to leave Italy to go somewhere in Europe, I had to go to an embassy. So I'd always get on a train, go to Milan, go to the English embassy, get my passport. And then, you would go in the morning and submit, and then you'd have a few hours to hang out. So I'd just be walking around Milan on my own. So unfortunately, I'll only be there 24 hours this time as well. But I'm excited to just be in Milan and hang out. And I mean, I love Italy.
Well, it's a cool city, and hopefully the weather will be good for you when you're here. You can have a look around. It's they cleaned it up a little bit probably since the last time you were here, and it's just it's a pretty place to be. Not too bad. Great. We're South Africans, and we've decided to make this our home now. So,
how long you guys been living there?
20 years now.
20 years, yeah.
Oh, wow. Good for you. Good for you.
We had a background, though. We had Italian parents. So it was kind of facilitated. But a lot of people come and they leave. It's kind of like a very business-oriented city. So a lot of people it's changing all the time. But I guess we just stayed. We just stayed. I mean, I don't know if we did the right thing. But
my roommate from that year abroad, his father was Italian. And then he stayed and he became a journalist and lives in Italy. And I mean, people do it. Why not?
Yeah, exactly. But I wanted to ask you something. Exactly. That's why we started jumping up on stage as well, because you only live once, and we're just such big stand-up fans, and we never we thought we've been talking to a lot of stand-up comedians, especially in Milan and Italy, and we're like, we need to understand the process before we actually start talking to these people, because we've always been fans for such a long time, and once you get on stage, we've been doing it for maybe 6 times we've done it, and it's you start to understand all the nuances of how echoing an empty room can be when it's not laughing, and how a little laugh can give you such an adrenaline rush. And the thing that you said before, which was really interesting, the difference between an up and coming comedy scene, like Milan, is the number of nights that you have in one night. Like you said, you would do 3 in one night, and now we're starting to get like 4 in a week, 5 in a week.
Yeah.
Like we start to see people actually doing this kind of like almost militant training process.
Don't use militant with the
I'm sorry.
Almost Mussolini-like, very, very fascist-like.
Yes, a little. That's how we roll.
Yeah, so it's just like really interesting, like to work out like this whole process and see how it's starting to sift into like the Milan comedy scene, and it's really interesting. Like it's one of those art forms that the more you know about the process, the more interesting it is. Like when you see a special, you understand how much work goes into it and how hard it is to get to that like tight 1 hour special. And like what I would like to know is, you've done quite a few now, and how was like the first time you did it? How's that different from now when you do a new special?
Again, you learn so much. The first special I did was the Axis of Evil comedy special with me, Ahmed Ahmed, Aaron Cater, and Dino Bidala, 4 of us. So we each did about 20, 25 minutes. This was around, it came out in 2007. We filmed it, I think, 2006. It was during the war on terror in America, so it was easy to make fun of the Bush administration. There was a lot of energy. If you see me on that stage, I've got a lot of energy. I can barely stand. I'm just like bouncing all around and talking fast and go, 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 go. And then you learn as you go. I still have a lot of energy on stage, but you learn to sit back a little bit. I was just watching a set I did recently, and I literally had my hand in my pocket and the microphone in my hand, and I was just kind of standing there and having a good time. So I think like anything, you slow down a little bit, you get more comfortable. I do a lot of talk. Back then, I wasn't talking to the audience as much. Now I do a lot more talking. I lead into my bits a lot by talking to the audience. So I'll say like, oh, I've been trying to exercise. Who exercises here? Who exercises a lot? What's your exercise? What do you do? And sometimes that presents some gold, because I have my joke coming up, but before I get to my joke, let's see what you say. So I was doing a show recently. Who exercises? A guy raised his hand. What do you do? What do you do? He goes, oh, I frisbee. I go, you frisbee? And then I went on a whole thing about, oh my God, now someone's ringing my doorbell. What's going on here? Hold on. Sorry, guys.
No worries. You have the camera and everything?
Who is it? Yeah, you can you leave it? Wait, what was I saying again? I lost it.
We were talking about the progression from the first one to
So I think you learn to relax a little bit. You talk to the audience. You get better at figuring out, like early on, if you look at people's just comedy clips on Comedy Central, that's how the clips used to go out before. There was no social media. You would do a show with Comedy Central, they'd put it on Comedy Central, people would see it, that was it. Or you would end up on The Tonight Show or whatever. And when you would do those Comedy Central ones, the editor would edit the hell out of it. And sometimes, like a lot of times, editors and specials would keep going to the audience. Mm-hmm. And then I learned a little while later that you don't want to keep going to the audience, because then if I'm watching it and I keep seeing the audience, I don't feel like I'm watching you. I feel like I'm, watching a special. So if you keep it on the guy and you keep it at 3/4, like right around there, and
like
sometimes close up, once in a while wide. The wide also, like people get these jibs and they they bring the jib down. I mean, if you're doing like a huge theater that's beautiful, sure, show the jib, bring it down, and let's get going. But all of that other stuff is like too much. I mean, and then once in a while you see people doing some very creative stuff with their specials, which is nice to see. But for the most part, a special really counts on the jokes. Got to be funny. Got to hit right away. Let's go.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said to like a beautifully styled, like Jew Ari Shafir's one with all the candles up. That was it was just such a beautiful sight to see that you really enjoy it. Or Bill Burr at the Red Rocks. It was just quite a cinematic sort of experience. So like it's cool, but a really funny like stand-up, I mean, at the Comedy Store or whatever it is, it's so iconic that it's fine. You can just do that and it's more than enough than anything else. You don't really have to exaggerate too much. It's still enjoyable, and you get lost, if you don't have all that extra stuff, you really concentrate on what's being said.
Yeah, absolutely.
I had something like, because I grew up, my career basically started from like promo editing. So I would, every now and then when I used to work back in the day for Comedy Central, I would have to do like 30-second promos for stand-up shows, or from like we do more cabaret in Italy. And I remember, I can't remember who it was. It was some American stand-up comedian talking about how the trailer that was edited, it's always like a mission to like, because it's very hard to condense a joke into like 30 seconds or like 40 seconds. How involved are you in that process? Like, do you get sent for approval, like these edits? Are you directly in it, or do you just kind of let the network
first of all, we don't really do trailers much anymore. We do, if you have a special coming out, somebody cuts a trailer, you look at it. To your point, it's like, does this inspire somebody to maybe get curious? Because if you get into the middle of a 1-minute joke and you want to cut it up and you're trying to do a 45-second trailer, well, you've lost 15 seconds of the joke. So, the joke doesn't play the way it's supposed to. So ultimately, either you have a clip that's viral that people like and they go see it and they go, oh, there's more to this, and they watch the rest, or there's a trailer that just piques people's interest. But I do, like with like all my clips that get posted, I got a guy who edits them for me. He'll send me the clip that he wants to, all the crowd work stuff, and he'll send me the clip, and then I'll say, you know what? You have too much fat in here. Let's get rid of this other, because sometimes in the middle of doing crowd work, you get distracted by someone else in the audience, and you start talking to them. Then you come back to the guy you were talking to, which in the room can be funny because everybody knows the context of why you're talking to the other guy and why you're talking to this guy. I got to look at it as, if somebody sees this on my, Instagram or TikTok, is it going to make sense? That's really what you got to do.
Yeah, it's changed a lot now. Like how much every single comedian has to be his own like media company basically, and like run the whole thing. It's crazy, And how did you enjoy the backstage sort of stuff, the post production and that kind of stuff, or is it something that you'd rather just?
I don't necessarily sit in the room and do it, but I feel like I have a pretty good eye for kind of what to keep, what to not keep. Sometimes you end up filming a special and you have a lot of material, and you go, this needs to come in, like you said, like the sweet spot is probably somewhere under an hour, because people that are watching it, they get tired of it. I used to think more is more. I did a Showtime special, and I gave them an hour and 17 minutes. And I thought, that's great. It's Showtime. They can do whatever they want. So I gave it to them. And then when I did my Netflix special, I was talking to the executive, and he goes, we've learned from our, statistics that like an hour and 7 tops. And I realized, I was like, he's right. Because when I would watch these comedians that I liked, like 20, 30 minutes in, I'd take a break. I'd come back and watch it again. So I think my Netflix special is actually an hour and 7. But yeah, if you can cut more and more and just bring it in at like 50 minutes, 55. So if somebody that stumbles upon it goes, I can watch it now, rather than going like, let me watch this later. Yeah, I think that's very important. So yeah, and you gotta know which jokes to take out. Like, it's kind of they say like in editing, it's like killing your babies, right? You got to kill that baby. And by the way, the good news of taking a joke out is that you can keep using it for your next special. Right. So that's one thing to keep in mind as well. Yeah.
And you've got this very multicultural. You were born in Persia and Iran, and you grew up in the States, but you speak Italian and you speak many other languages, if I'm not mistaken, right? You got at least like 3 languages.
I speak Persian, English, Italian, and then I speak very broken Spanish, and then I know a word or 2 in French. That's it. And
that's I would say rare for the average American.
Yeah.
And how does that color your comedy?
A lot of times I'm talking to the audience, and a European or somebody comes upon us in the show, or somebody who's from somewhere else, whether it's European or someone from an Arab country or Iran or wherever, and I start talking to them. I go, how many languages? And they go, I speak 4 languages. I go, you idiots. I go, this guy speaks 4 languages. You guys barely speak 2. I make fun of Americans and our pride. Some people are proud of not speaking other languages. And it's probably not the people that are at my shows. My shows tend to attract a good, smart audience. But there's some Americans we know who are all about like, this is America, speak American. So you're just an idiot. Just it's okay to learn another language. So yeah, definitely that kind of stuff plays in. I love finding people from places that it was unexpected. I had somebody come from Macedonia recently, and I go, Macedonia? I got nothing. I I think I said all I know about Macedonia is I think it's a salad in Italy.
Fruit salad, yeah.
Yeah, and then I had fun with them. I was like, oh, how do you say? Teach us something. How do you say my name is blah 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 in Italian? They did, and it was just. I'm sorry, in Macedonian. Yeah. And so I love having people from different backgrounds, and we learn, and but you also learn how much we have in common, because when you talk about your immigrant parents or your parents from another place, it's very similar to their parents. I mean, it's just it's crazy how similar we are.
I think immigrants, because we grew up Italian immigrants to South Africa. We were first generation over there, and we lived in a really small town. So of course, farmers. Very, very closed. And so we were very different to everybody there. And then we moved back to Italy. We'd been contaminated by South Africa by that time. Then we moved back. So now we are immigrants in Italy as well, because you never find really a spot, because every country that you move to, that you live in, sort of leaves something in you. And so now we're in Italy, but we have 1 foot in Africa and 1 foot in Europe. And it's a very...
I always say I never felt American enough. I never felt Iranian enough. I always feel like both cultures kind of I don't fit in completely in either one, but at the same time, there's a lot of us that are like that. And so you realize like a lot of people are thinking that, you know what I'm saying? Some people go gung-ho and they're like, I'm American 100%. Some people are like, I only listen to Persian music. I only hang out with Persian people. They really commit to that. I can't. And I think there's a lot of us that can't. We're somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. It's
and
a cool
I think that's good for comedy, because then you invite a lot of people into your world. And a lot of people, by the way, this is actually one of my pet peeves, is people go, oh, you're the Persian comedian. I go, no, I'm not a Persian comedian. I'm a comedian who happens to be Iranian, but also American, and also a father, and also bald, and also this, and also that. And I try to emphasize to people that you don't have to be from my background to come get the show. Because I have people sometimes go like, oh, I don't know, Persian comedy, it's all very ethnic humor. I go, there's a lot of ethnic jokes, but it's not just about Persians, it's about everyone, and it's about things that we're all going through. And then the opposite is I have Iranians who think that the show is only for Iranians. So I've had this I talk about it on stage. I had this lady email me. She's like, I want to come to your show. And I was going to bring my colleague, but I don't know if he's going to understand the show because he doesn't speak Persian. And I wrote her back. I go, the show's in English. And she's like, it is? I was like, yeah. It's like, haven't you seen any of my stuff online? And I think,
I find it incredible that people still email to ask questions directly, and you're replying to them directly.
Oh, I do all the time. I do because I get that all the time. People go, is the show in English or is it in Persian? I'm like, no, it's in English. Bring your friends. So whenever I can, if there's somebody who writes something that's worthy of. It's a nice question, you respond. And then, of course, there's a lot of junk you get as well.
Of course. There was actually a joke in Birds and the Bees that I felt very seen by you when you spoke about your dad's Playboys.
Yeah.
And I did exactly the same thing.
Yeah. They weren't actually my dad's Playboys. My friend found them on the street.
Yeah, your friends.
And I was teaching myself the Birds and the Bees because nobody had taught me the Birds and the Bees.
But I was selling them. I was selling them at school. I would take them in.
Yeah, we sold them too. Yeah,
that's why they disappeared every now and then.
Yeah. Well, Dad would put them in the recycling bin, and then from there they would disappear and be sold at school. It was fantastic.
So it's like I'm not just a pervert; I'm also a businessman.
Yeah, businessman first, pervert second. But the great thing in South Africa is that we used to have a thing called Scope magazine, which is our version of Playboy, and in South Africa we had very heavy censorship because the regime was very prudish as well as racist. So at one point they would put scratch and win little stickers on the nipples and the vagina,
God.
Right? So
Hilarious.
You have to scratch them away to see the nipples, right? So those would sell for a lot more because my dad didn't care, he wasn't looking at tits, he was just there to read articles. So I would sell these ones that the kids could scratch off, and they were all very happy.
It's kind of like your version of de-virginizing someone.
Exactly. It's very weird. It was very odd.
Yeah. That's a whole category in itself.
South Africa was a wild place in the early 90s.
It could have been a scratch and sniff one as well. That was really big.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Now you're thinking.
I don't know. Fruit flavored.
Yeah. I remember those T-shirts used to be scratch and sniff pizza flavor. It was
that was terrible. I remember that. So I saw you, and during lockdown we did you did a Zoom comedy for a Zoom comedy show, and that was a very interesting experience as a viewer. I was interested to see from your point of view, because for us it didn't feel like a comedy show. It felt like a conversation. It felt like something more like what we're doing here. And
yeah, I personally liked the Zoom comedy shows. I'll tell you why. Because early on, I didn't know what I was doing. So early on, I did one for some charity, and they were all muted, and I'm telling my jokes, and I don't know if they're laughing or not. But then I came to understand what you got to do is you pick, when you're doing a show, you go, guys, get 10 of your audience members that you know are good laughers, have them unmute, make sure there's no cats and dogs around. But when I tell the jokes, they got to laugh. Like, we need them to laugh, because if they laugh, then the other 100 people on the Zoom will know to laugh and enjoy it. Right. And then the reason I liked it was because, especially with crowd work, when I do crowd work, there's a guy in the front, I'm talking to him. The people behind him don't see what he looks like. I just talk to him. But on Zoom, if I'm talking to you and I go, hey, are those earphones or are you landing an airplane? I'm talking to you, people can come to your thing and they see who I'm talking to. Right. And so to your point, a lot of times it became kind of conversational, but you'd come in with like a joke idea, right? Like, oh my God, we're still on lockdown. I just got my wine. I'm going to get drunk tonight, you guys. Who else has been drinking? And, and then all of a sudden become conversational with like, hey, you've been, hey, Johnny, you've been drinking? What have you been drinking? Tequila. Oh my God, show it to, and then all of a sudden it became a thing. So I enjoyed those because, by the way, then I could finish, hit end, and then go right into my living room, and just chill.
Yeah. You're already home.
But of course, there's nothing like a live audience and the energy you have in a live audience. There's just nothing. You can't replicate it.
And they just disappeared as soon as the shows opened up again, and you could go back to the store or whatever.
Well, of course. I mean, people want to go out. We are social beings at our core, so we want to go out. We want to go to restaurants. We want to go to plays. We want to go to comedy shows, and so it's nice to see that happening again. And yeah, there's an energy. I just did the Comedy Works in Denver, which is notorious for being one of the best clubs in the country because it's got really low ceilings and it's just like they're right on top of you. And one of the shows that we did was just like so electric. I was just on that stage. I felt like I was on a wave just surfing. You tell a joke, and and you're like, oh, this is great. You come off stage, you're like, I'm the king of the world, So there's nothing like that live energy.
And what do you do after a show like that? Can you walk around? Do you
cocaine? No.
Finally,
well, first of all, when you're doing those shows, you have another show because that was my early show Saturday. Okay. I had another show, so I was just scarfing down my dinner and getting ready for the next show, and but saying like I was like, oh, I got to get the footage on that. I think there was some good stuff there. That's a good show.
Can you carry the energy into the next one? Is it something you
certainly do? You hope. Yeah, well, you hope. Yeah. Like it's almost like you're worried that it's not going to be as good energy, but you do hope that they come in with that energy on the second show. And you can't believe your hype and you can't believe your failures. Yeah. Because if you fail and you go, oh my God, they're right, I suck. Forget it. Worst set ever. I'm going to quit. You're going to tank. And if you succeed and you go, I am the best comedian that ever lived, again, it's going to be short-lived because the next show is not going to be as good and you're going to get in your head. So you just got to sit there and go, wow, that was a good one. I hope this next crowd is good. And regardless, my rhythm is good. I'm feeling good about my delivery. That's really what you can control is just being present. Because at the same time, like you might have one show here and one show with low energy and you just gotta you walk away on the second show and go, oh God, they had a very different energy, but you still try to deliver the way you can. And also you start, we did shows in New Jersey. The first show was hot, second show wasn't as packed and the energy was lower and they were tired and all and at a certain point you got to decide on stage, do I stay the course and do my act, or do I just start trying to wake them up with more crowd work? Or what do these guys want? Do they want raunchier? Maybe I got to go a little raunchier. What do they want? And I'm trying to figure them out as I go. And sometimes you find that key, like, at some point and you go through there. Because ultimately, you're trying to present your show, but you're also trying to be funny. And they're not always the same thing.
Right.
Because to some audience that's just not feeling you, it might not be as funny as they thought it was going to be. And then so you have to do what you would call, an audible and switch and say, hey, let me tickle you guys for the rest of the night and forget my material. Let me just tickle you guys a little bit, so at least you leave going like I had a good time.
Yeah, it's so sorry.
Go for it.
It's so interesting because from different, my wife's an architect, so she's still creative, but she sees her results after a year, maybe two. Photographer, I see my results sort of straight away, but actually coming into the magazine after a month or so. And then for comedy, you've got that thing where it happens instantly. You have that feedback constantly, and it's very difficult, I think, to like we were saying before, bring the energy. You got to use the people, so you can't really use yourself, because in everything else you sort of just, you are enough, and you just use your power and your energy and everything, and you sort of convince everybody else that what you're doing is the right thing. Whereas there, you don't have time to convince them that you're doing the right thing. You have to sort of bring them to your side using their own.
Yeah, you have an hour on stage. You got an hour, and you got an hour. You got to figure it out. And usually, if you're doing a show and it's your show and they came to see you, they're excited and they're a friendly audience. The worst is when you're in front of a corporate audience. They've hired you to do a show for their corporate dinner, and they don't know who you are, and they're eating their food, and you got to do 45 minutes or something. And those are the ones where you're like, okay, I got to find the key. That's why you talk to the corporation before. You go, who's your boss? Who's the human resources? Who can I make fun of? Who does everybody know that I can make fun of? And you hope that carries you through that act, because again, they're just not on your home turf. And those are the hard ones.
Yeah, that's a whole area that no one, if you don't really know anything about stand-up comedy, you have no idea that this world exists. The whole corporate private party aspect it must be it's crazy. It's insane that they exist, but probably a lot of the work comes from that as well, especially when you get to a certain point.
It's daunting. Yeah, of course. People, corporations have good money and they'll bring you along, and sometimes you're a great fit for that company and they set it up perfectly. If they set it up in a room where they're very close to you and they're just sitting there and watching you, that's great. Sometimes it's the worst. There's they're 20 feet away is the closest person. They're in round tables. There's 800 people or 1,000 people in the room, so it goes really deep. The people in the back aren't even paying attention. Yeah. You're on stage screaming, hey, in the back, pay attention. In the front, it's just it's really a payday. That's not an artistic endeavor at all.
You got the three elements almost. You got the audience, you got the location, and you've got the comedian that have to sort of be perfectly in sync in some way. Because if you got a great audience but you got a terrible location, it gets lost, and then you got to have those three things always.
Yeah, and sometimes you don't realize it until you're up there, because you assume that everyone's doing what they're supposed to do, but you get on stage and you go, oh my God, these lights are horrible, and you're on stage trying it, or oh my God, there's a dance floor from the stage, then there's a dance floor, then there's the audience. So you jump off that stage and you get on the dance floor and you start doing your act on the dance floor. Or sometimes the sound is echoey and you're like, you know what, screw it. You put the mic down and you just start doing a cappella, because you can't. It's not always perfectly set up for you.
Yeah, this is really beautiful, because obviously every comedian has his own style, and some just stay to the script. Some it seems that you are almost you're not scared to go off script and just to try different things and just to really play to the situation, to the crowd. But has that always been part of your way of being, or did you have to become that way?
I think what happened was when I first started, I became a regular at the Comedy Store, and Mitzi Shore, who was the owner of the club, would put me up late. And I wasn't a dirty comedian, but she would just put me up late. And when you're up late, you usually end up on stage 12:30, 1 in the morning in front of 5 people. And so I learned then that I can't just get up in front of 5 people and just do my act and ignore the fact that it's 1 in the morning and there's no one there. So I started talking to the audience and going like, why are you guys still here? Like, I waited just so I could practice. Why are you here? And we would talk, and then that interaction would happen, and it would turn into a good show. Like, there was these two nerdy guys one time with this really like beautiful girl on the side. They were the only ones in the audience, and I just was curious. I go, how did you two end up with her? What's the story here, guys? And they started laughing and having a good time and telling me their story and who they were. And I don't know I forget what the whole story was, but that led to us having a conversation, and then me doing a joke, and then going back to them and me doing the joke. And so that taught me that you can do that. And now again, depending on where I am and what I'm doing, I sometimes, will change my plans, especially again, like if you're doing a corporate, and like there's been time, oh my God, I was doing like this is a few years ago, I was doing a corporate event, like a fundraiser, and these people just weren't laughing. And I'm like, what do I got to do? So then I start talking to the audience, and my comebacks in my mind I'm like, these are great comebacks, and they're still not giving me anything. I'm like, oh God, so finally I just jump in the audience and I start going to the person, like they're at round tables. So I'm going up to the person at the round table, and I'm like interviewing them and trying to really get and I'm just, and I was like, this is the worst audience ever. So, you try. You try and you hope one of those elements works. And if it doesn't, you finish and you go, all right, I'm done. That was great. I did my 20 minutes. Thank God. Let's move on.
Paid up front, maybe.
Yeah, pay me.
That's what you want.
But the whole Mitzi Shore thing is very interesting. Like, that's something that just fascinates me, like as a fan, but also as an establishment. Like, it's legendary. Like, and if I always tend to think about like our Italian audience, they're a lot of them don't know about these things, right? How much of a door opener there was if you got in the good graces of it. Was like Johnny Carlson, there was like Conan O'Brien, and all like these establishments, pretty much. Like, is it the same? Like when you are in that situation, because in Los Angeles or in New York, that when you're in it, you're surrounded by all these amazing comics, and you're growing up with them. Do you still feel that same kind of not saying like shock, but maybe that same kind of legendary status? Like, has it always been like that?
Yeah, when I first started, of course, at the Comedy Store, I was like, oh my God, that's Andrew Dice Clay. I used to watch him when I was a kid. That's Paul Mooney. He used to write for Richard Pryor and Eddie Murphy. And I actually went up to Paul Mooney when the first night I was there. I was like, Mr. Mooney, it's a pleasure to be on the same stage as you. And he kind of looked at me like, what? And I was like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. And then after that, though, you hang out, then you become friends. Now, oh my God, I'm friends with Andrew Dice Clay. Now I'm friends with whoever it is. And, back then it was like Joe Rogan and Joe Diaz, and I'm trying to see who else, like Sebastian and Maniscalco. We started together, and all these guys, like, we all know that this is a mecca of comedy. And you feel the energy. It's great. And you have people coming and going, and there's people in different levels of their careers, but everybody talks to each other. That's the difference, I said, between music and comedy. I think musicians perform, in theaters, stadiums, and then when they're doing smaller venues, they might do a club. But it's still hard to go to a club and end up talking to, whoever it is, John Bon Jovi. Mm-hmm. But for us, we're in the back hall after the show. There's been so many times I'm hanging out at the back hall, and here's Dave Chappelle, and there's Chris Rock, and there's whoever, and all these people are just hanging out talking, and random people can walk up and start talking to them because there's no big distance between us and the audience. And so you're in a legendary place, but you also are part of it, and you also don't take yourself too seriously. You just go, wow, this is amazing. What a cool, if nothing else, I got my name on the wall at the Comedy Store. If nothing else, I got to, film a special there. If nothing else, I got to, and I love it. I feel the feeling I have when I go there. I'm excited. I know everybody. It feels like home. It really does.
Is there a modern Mitzi Shore? Somebody now that is doing what she used to do?
I mean, listen, the clubs, like there was Mitzi Shore at the Comedy Store. There's Jamie Masada at the Laugh Factory, who's also a great guy. And then there was obviously Bud Friedman at the Improv. Now, Bud Friedman for a long time had moved to the back, and the booker there is named Rita. She's been booking us for years. And then the Comedy Store now has Emily, and Factory has Maria. So they're all women again. I don't know if they are quote unquote like the kingmakers that Mitzi used to be. I think that during Mitzi's time, there was so fewer outlets to becoming known. So you had to go through those clubs to then be seen and be on the Tonight Show, and then you're on NBC, CBS, or whatever. You had a sitcom and you go on. Now, with social media and people coming in with, millions of followers or whatever, I think some people are already like, oh, I've already got game going here. Can I be a part of your legendary establishment? And the good news is, to Emily LaForde, to her credit, she is just as picky about it as, like, it doesn't matter if you got 10 million followers. If you're not ready, you're not going to become a regular. Right. She wants to put people up on stage that are interesting, that are saying interesting things, that are different, that are going to add to this kind of, like, the Comedy Store still has kind of like a rock and roll kind of reputation, meaning like you could go there and see somebody who's doing something edgy, someone who's doing something political, someone who's doing something, but they're all, of a certain caliber. She's not just going to make you a regular because you have, millions of followers. Right. So that's good to know that they keep their standards going. And that's kind of what's going on now.
That's interesting.
I love that.
Yeah.
And you've done so much in your career, and you're going to do more, but do you have like a dream gig that you would love to do that you maybe see a little bit as a step too far?
The dream gig I've wanted to do is I've wanted to have my own like sitcom show where I can run a show and bring in friends and write with people and just get it done. And I've pitched and sold several, but none of them have gone to air. That would be my dream thing. And really, I always advise people, I say, just get it done yourself. So who knows, if my ADHD allows me, maybe I'll just get it done myself. But that's kind of the dream gig there. And then, of course, in stand-up, there's so many places I would love to play. I mean, I've done the Kennedy Center, which was one of my dreams, and I was able to do it. And that said, yes, I would love to play Radio City Music Hall. Yes, I would love to play. There's a lot of legendary spaces around the world that you go, that would be so cool. In Milan this time, I think I'm doing a 200-seater. That'd be great to come back and do like the opera, But you have to get to a certain level and have a vision, by the way, because they're not just going to be like, first of all, you got to be able to sell the tickets, number one. So if you can sell those, whatever it is, 3,000 seats, number one. But number two, I think you have to have a vision that's a little more than just, I'm going to do stand up in this beautiful space. You got to have like, there's a reason I want to use this space. And so I'd be open for all that stuff, man. I get excited.
I'd love to see Maz Jobrani live in Tehran.
Oh my God, that would be great.
Wow.
That would, I think a government change would have to happen. But so that one's a long shot. Well, that would be a dream come true as well. But again, I don't even put that on the list because it's just such a long shot.
It's a big one.
Dream. That's what dreams are made of. Eh? It would be amazing.
Right, right.
I think it would be like if that happens, it would be like just such an amazing message for like everything. It means that the countries come to a certain place that you've sort of had a homecoming. I don't know. It's a script that I've got in my head.
That'd be great. I'm down.
I knew that we're going to do this chat, so let's make it.
Yeah.
Let's make
you
it
produce it. You produce it. Let's go.
We'll produce a sitcom in Tehran. That would be amazing. But, just like I know you're like tight for time, but I was just really curious because you said in the very beginning that like comedy people want new stuff and like music people want to listen to what they know. But is there any stand-up set or joke that you like or comedian that you just routinely go back and watch like from the past or even like new stuff, whatever? I
don't necessarily watch a lot of comedy. If I'm at the club, I'll sit in the back and watch the guy who's up before me or maybe the guy after me or a girl, whatever. And I'm always amazed at how funny some people are and how much they're killing it. Tony Rock, he's Chris Rock's younger brother. He had some bits he was doing that were just like ridiculous to the point where it was so funny. I told my wife, I go, you got to come next time I go to the club. You got to come watch this. Like, so like, that's great. Or JB Smoove, the guy from Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Amazing.
I remember to the point, like Sebastian Maniscalco and I, we started together and we ended up in Montreal at the comedy festival together. And he had not seen JB Smoove before. And we were at this theater where I think we were performing and then JB was performing. And I go to Sebastian, I go, have you ever watched this guy? He goes, no. I go, come, you got to watch this guy. And I'd never seen Sebastian laugh so hard because JB Smoove's act outs of all the funny stuff he does is just so funny. So when you got a guy like that, like JB Smoove, who's painting the picture for you, you can watch it over and over again. And that's part of the fun, is bringing a friend and going, look at this, watch this. So once in a while, I'll think of like a joke or a comedian, and I'll tell my kids, oh my God, you guys got to watch this. Or nowadays on Instagram, you see like Brian Regan doing some really funny joke, and I send it to my kids. So
yeah,
that's it, you know.
That's
really cool.
Cool. So I think we're going to let you go. Would you like to sell some tickets in Milan?
I would love to. Let's sell some tickets. Come on, guys.
We're on the 7th of November, right?
7th of November. I'm doing a whole tour all through Europe, coming into Milan, one night only, 7th of November. I think it's almost sold out. So hopefully people get tickets. And then if we feel like there's enough momentum, we could add a second show. But I don't even know if that's in the works. I'd have to talk to the promoters. But I'm excited. I'm looking forward, man. I'm so excited. Fantastic. Just to speak Italian, you know.
Oh, dude, it's going to be great. It's going to be amazing.
It's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on. And this is a brilliant chat. I'm really happy about it.
Yeah, it was super nice too. Man. Yeah, this is like appreciated like a lot.
Do you guys remember there was a song that goes, because I'm a rapper from Milano, Anapalo, Italiano. Do you remember that at all?
Not at all.
Maybe that was before our time.
How about Giovanotto? That was the other one, was Giovanotti.
Giovanotti, yeah. He used to rap in English as well.
Musica della Madonna, gente, divertente.
He was really ahead of his time as well.
He was a trapper before the trapper came.
Yeah, man.
All right, guys.
Everybody, Maz Jobrani, the legend. Thank you very much.
Grazie.
See you in Milan.
Ci vediamo. Ciao.
Bye. Ciao.
Thank you for listening to Arcade Studio Podcast with Andrea and René Olivo. 100% self-produced and free. Available on YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Music, Amazon Music, and other podcast platforms. Just like all creatives, we are obsessed with feedback too. So, leave us a review. Did you like the episode, guest, or topics? Write to us. Any comments, suggestions, or proposals? Write to us. Don't like the font, colors, or how we talk? F*** off. But then, write to us. We're open to all interactions because your feedback is fundamental to help us get better. Arcade Studio Podcast with Andrea and René Olivo. Listen more.